Welcome to an overview of IELTS listening for test takers. My name is Misty Wilson, and I am the ESL Program Development and Research Manager with IELTSUSA. This presentation covers an overview of what you can expect from the listening test, from test taking strategies, and some advice for preparing for the listening section of the test. The IELTS listening test is 30 minutes long. There are 4 parts with 10 questions in each part. Each part will have one recording that you'll listen to one time, and then you will have 30 seconds in between each part before the new recording begins. These recordings increase in complexity, so they start off easier and then become more difficult with each recording. You'll hear a variety of accents on the recordings from American, Canadian, British, Australian, and New Zealand. There's a combination of monologues and conversations. And at the end of the listening test, you will have 10 minutes to transfer your answers onto the answer sheet. And that's the time when you have to check spelling and make sure that if you had any sentence completion activities, that those are grammatically correct. Now I want to talk about each part of the listening and some test taking strategies for how you should listen. So for part 1, there's a conversation between 2 people in an everyday situation. It could be booking conference facilities, finding out about specific courses at a university, finding out about travel services, or maybe renting a house. Conversation's approximately 2 minutes long. And here, the strategy that you need to have is listening for specific and factual information, because the questions on this part will be asking for specific and factual information. So part 1 is a conversation in a social setting. Part 2 is also set in a social setting, but it's a talk or short speech by one person. And it's on a topic of general interest with a transactional purpose. So it might be information about a public event, talks about different tourist attractions, information about facilities like a library, or maybe it's the benefits of exercise. So maybe something that you would hear on a radio program. Here, again, you're listening for specific and factual information. Part 3 is set in an educational setting, and you'll have a discussion between 2 to 4 people, and it might be a seminar class or a group of students discussing about a research project, or a talk and question about a specific topic, maybe an interview with an expert on a topic. Now here you're listening for specific information, attitudes, and opinions. So while you're listening, you need to have this in mind, that some of the questions will be more than just what was said, but will also include the attitudes that the speaker has about the topic or the opinion that they have. The 4th and final part of the listening is a monologue, and this is in an academic style, like a presentation or a lecture. There might be a talk about scientific research, a lecture on environmental problems, or a talk about how to develop in a specific career. Here, you're listening for main ideas, specific information, attitudes, and opinions. So if you remember, part 1 is easier and part 4 is the hardest, because you're asked to listen for more than just one type of information. Each part has 2 or 3 question types. So if you remember, each part will have 10 questions. So you might have 5 questions that are classifying, and then 5 questions that are multiple choice. So these are a variety of different question types that you might be asked, and we'll take a look at a few of them so you can see what they look like. So here we have form completion. So you might be given a form, and there might be a discussion between 2 people, one who's wanting to ship a package somewhere. And as you listen along, you'll be filling out this form. You might also be asked to complete a table or some kind of flow chart, or you might be asked to complete some short answers. It's a great idea to look before you begin, so you can identify where the numbers are at, and these form completion tasks are in order as you hear them. So you won't have an answer for number 7 before you have an answer for number 1. Another type of question you might be more familiar with is multiple choice, and you'll be asked several questions and have some answers to choose from. You might have 4 or 5 answers to choose from. And also, one thing to keep in mind is sometimes synonyms are used. And so in the recording itself, it might not say before noon, it might say before 12 o'clock, for example. So you need to be paying attention, not just for the exact words, but for the meaning. Another kind of example here of a question type is summary completion. And here you would listen to a recording. This one comes from 2 people discussing a summer program, and you're completing the summary as you listen. The answers are in order as the recording goes. So again, you're not trying to answer 30 before you'd answer 27. Here you also relying on some synonym usage because you won't have the exact words always said that you would write down. And some other things to keep in mind on this is that you need to pay attention to spelling and grammar. So remember, you have 10 minutes at the end of the listening to transfer your answers onto the answer sheet, and this is also the time to make sure that everything fits grammatically. So for example, on number 27, the word that it's looking for is motivation, a great deal of motivation. Well, you would not want to use the verb motivate, for example, because that wouldn't fit in grammatically. It's just an example of how grammar is important in the listening section. And then this example is a labeling activity that you might be asked to do. And here, this was a monologue of someone discussing the layout of the town library. And as you listen, you'd have to identify which room is on this diagram. Again, before you listen, you want to find out where is number 11, 12, 13, 14, so that you know where the answers should go. And some other labeling activities that you might have a map of a town, or a pie chart, or a diagram showing a process, like how rain is formed, for example. So some other, and here you would just be looking for the letters, right? So looking for which room are the computers in, and you put the letter C is what you're looking for. So just a few examples of the question types, and we'll have some other videos that look in detail about strategies for each of these question types. There are 40 questions total on the listening test, and each question is worth 1 point. Poor spelling and grammar are penalized. So if you do spell the word incorrectly, or if you have a sentence completion and there's no, you're using incorrect grammar, for example, then that is not counted as a point. You're not count off for incorrect answers. So if you run out of time, always guess, because that's not counted against you. Scores are reported as a whole band or half band. And this is an example of average listening raw scores in the average band, in the band that's received. So keep this in mind. If you are studying and your goal is to get a 6.0 in listening, then you're just looking for a little over half correct, 23 out of 40. If you're trying to get a 7.0, then you're looking for 30 out of 40. So this is important to keep in mind as you're listening through. There will be questions that you don't get right, and that's okay. Most people's goal is not a 9.0 on IELTS. So don't stress if you miss something. You don't want to be focused on answering one question and then lose track of what's coming up, because then you might miss the following questions. So if you didn't catch something, don't worry, move on. It's important that you don't stay focused on that question and miss out on the other information that's coming up. So some advice for listening. We went over the 4 parts, and I discussed the type of listening that you need to do for each part. So identify the reason that you're listening. Make sure that you know that ahead of time. Use your time wisely. You have a few seconds before each part to take a look at the next part. You want to look at the pictures, look at the questions, so that you're prepared for what you're going to hear. Also, there are instructions on the listening test. You might be asked in the form completion or sentence completion test question type to write no more than 3 words for each answer. So you need to pay attention to any instructions. If the instructions say 1 word and or a number for each answer, that means that you might have 1 word and a number, or you might have 1 word or a number. So you could have a word and a number, or just a number by itself, but you would not have 3 words if that was the instructions. Another type of instruction that you might see is no more than 3 words and or a number. So it means you could have 3 words and a number, or you might just have a number for an answer. Don't worry about understanding every word. Concentrate on picking out the information that you need. And as you're preparing, the way to improve listening skills is really by listening. There's no magic way around it. So I encourage you to listen to a variety of accents, not just American or British accents, but you want to hear a variety of accents. And I recommend listening to films in English. NPR has a number of radio programs, and they feature often people from all over the world. BBC as well. Or there's readers with audios that you can purchase online, or that you can find online for free as well. And then YouTube and TED Talks are a great place to find lectures. But we're not just listening for lectures, right? And so make sure that the types of listening that you're doing are also involving conversations. And that's why news programs are great, because they involve more than one person that's talking back and forth. So I encourage you to listen to a variety of different types of audios, not just in terms of accents, but also context and the number of people that are speaking. While you're waiting for our next video, check out our IELTS Prep for Test Takers site. And if you have any questions, email us at IELTS@IELTSUSA.org.